Gold miner struck rich, but his bride was stolen by the sheriff before he could claim her. The gold gleamed like a god's last breath, and Lillian was gone before he could touch it. Elias Vance knelt in the dry riverbed, fingers raw from digging, his shirt soaked through with sweat and dirt. The sun hung heavy over the Nevada wastes, pressing down like a fist. He pulled the nugget free, bigger than his thumb, heavier than a child's heart, and for a moment, the world stopped. No wind. No coyotes. Just the quiet hum of his own pulse. He pressed it to his chest, where her wedding veil still lay, folded tight against his skin. He'd carried it since the day they married under a broken oak in Missouri, 3 years ago. She'd whispered then, "Promise me you'll build us a house with windows that catch the morning light." He'd promised. And now, with this gold, he could. He stood, staggering slightly, the weight of fortune pulling him upright. He turned toward camp, grinning so wide his face ached. "Lillian," he called. "I found it. We're rich." No answer. Only dust. He walked faster. Past the smoldering fire pit. Past the empty coffee pot. Past the saddle still slung over the wagon wheel, its leather cracked but clean. Her boots were gone. Her shawl. Her comb. Even the small tin of lavender soap she kept tucked beside her pillow. Only one thing remained, a single glove, white cotton frayed at the fingertips, lying just beyond the edge of the trail, as if dropped in haste. His throat tightened. He ran. The sheriff's horse stood tied to the hitching post outside the saloon, nostrils flaring, sweat-stained hide glistening in the late afternoon glare. The man himself sat on the porch steps, polishing his badge with a rag, boots propped up like he owned the whole damn earth. Elias didn't draw his gun. Didn't shout. He just stared. "You took her," he said. The sheriff didn't look up. "Took what?" "The woman. My wife." A pause. A slow blink. Then, finally, the man lifted his eyes, gray as a winter sky, cold and tired. "She came to me," he said. "Said she couldn't take the dust. Couldn't take waiting. Said you'd die out here, and she didn't want to bury you." Elias felt the gold in his pocket turn to stone. "She wouldn't leave me," Elias whispered. "She didn't leave," the sheriff replied. "She chose." Elias didn't move. Didn't breathe. Behind him, the wind picked up again, slow at first, then rising like a warning. Dust curled off the desert floor, swirling in lazy spirals, swallowing the trail behind them, erasing footprints, hiding tracks. The sheriff stood slowly, brushed off his coat, and walked past him without another word. He didn't lock the door. Didn't check his revolver. Just climbed into the saddle, kicked his horse forward, and rode east, toward the mountains, toward the railroad, toward somewhere warm. Elias stood there until the sun bled red into the horizon. Until the dust swallowed the hoofprints. Until the silence became too loud to bear. He went back to the riverbed, knelt again, and dug until his nails broke. He buried the gold. Then he walked to the spot where her glove had fallen. And picked it up. Held it to his face. Smelled lavender. And cried, for the first time since he was 10, since his mother died of fever and no one came to hold him. That night, the coyotes howled louder than usual. And the stars above seemed colder. Like they were watching. Like they knew. He walked for 27 days without speaking a word. His boots split at the soles, his beard grew thick with dust and dried sweat, and his eyes, once bright with dreams of white shutters and rose gardens, had turned the color of old gunmetal. He didn't sleep in beds anymore. He slept under bridges, in abandoned mine shafts, beneath wagons left to rot by roadside graves. Sometimes he woke to the sound of rats chewing on the bones of men who died before him. Other times, he woke to silence so deep he swore he could hear his own heartbeat echo inside his skull. He carried the glove in his coat pocket. Always. And the gold? He'd buried it deep, not out of fear, but because holding it felt like holding her ghost. Every time his fingers brushed against the nuggets in his pack, he saw her face. Not smiling. Not crying. Just, waiting. In a town called Hollow's End, where the church bell had rusted shut and the only sign of life was a flickering lantern above a boarded-up bakery, Elias traded his last bullet for half a loaf of blackened bread. The baker, a woman with one eye and hands gnarled as tree roots, handed it to him without a word. Her apron smelled of yeast and sorrow. "You're the one they say chased the sheriff," she said, finally. Elias didn't answer. She watched him chew. Slowly. Like each bite might be his last. "She didn't run," the woman murmured. "Not at first." Elias froze. The woman leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper that carried farther than any shout. "The sheriff came through 3 nights before you did. Said he was looking for a lost wife. Said she'd been taken by bandits. But I saw her. In the back room. She was crying. Not from fear. From guilt." Elias's breath hitched. "She kept saying your name," the woman went on. "Over and over. Like a prayer. Like a curse." He didn't move. Didn't blink. "She asked me if I had any lavender soap," the woman added. Said it reminded her of home. Elias's hand trembled. He reached into his coat. Pulled out the glove. Pressed it to his chest. "I didn't know," he whispered. The woman nodded. "Most men don't." That night, he slept in the alley behind the bakery, wrapped in his coat, the bread tucked beside him like a child. He dreamed of Lillian kneading dough by candlelight, humming that same tune she sang when she thought no one was listening. When he woke, his cheeks were wet. He found the sheriff's trail 2 days later, fresh hoofprints cutting through a dry creek bed, heading north toward the Black Ridge Pass. He followed. By the time he reached the pass, his rifle was down to 3 bullets. His canteen held nothing but dust and the faint taste of blood. He hadn't eaten in 3 days. On the 3rd night, camped beneath a dead pine, he heard it, the distant sound of a woman singing. Soft. Broken. Familiar. He climbed the ridge silently, heart hammering like a drum in a war march. Below him, in a circle of firelight, sat the sheriff. Alone. But not empty. On the ground beside him lay a small wooden bowl. Inside, a piece of bread. And beside it, a single sprig of lavender. The sheriff was talking. To no one. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean for it to end this way." Elias raised his rifle. Finger on the trigger. 1 squeeze. Justice. But then, the wind shifted. Carried the scent of lavender. And for the first time since the desert took her, Elias remembered something worse than grief. Forgiveness. He lowered the gun. Walked away. Left the bullets. Left the gold. Left the name he once wore like armor. That morning, his hands shook so badly he couldn't light a match. So he used his teeth to tear open his shirt. And clawed at his own skin. Until the blood ran down his ribs. Until the pain felt real. Until he believed he deserved it. The town didn't have a name on any map. But the saloon did. Lillian's last hope. Elias stood in the doorway for a full minute, his boots caked in dried mud and blood, his coat hanging off him like the skin of a dead man. Inside, the air was thick with whiskey, smoke, and silence, the kind that clings to your throat and won't let you swallow. He'd heard the story 3 times already. Sheriff came through last spring. Paid double for a room behind the bar. Never left it. Never let anyone in. Brought food every night. Talked to someone who never answered. Some said she was sick. Others said he kept her chained. A few whispered, too quiet for anyone to hear, that she wasn't there at all. That the sheriff was just talking to the ghost of his own conscience. Elias didn't care about the rumors. He cared about the scent. Lavender. Faint, but real, drifting from behind the locked door at the back of the saloon. He walked past the poker table, past the drunk who spat on his boot, past the piano player who stopped mid-note and stared. No one spoke. They knew who he was. The gold miner. The widower. The man who'd walked 500 miles with nothing but a glove and a broken heart. He stopped before the door. It was oak. Heavy. Iron-bound. A padlock hung loose, rusted open. No key needed. Just courage. He pushed. The hinges groaned like a dying animal. Inside, the room was small. Bare. No bed. No chains. Just a rocking chair. Facing the wall. And on the floor beside it, a loaf of bread. Half-eaten. Still warm. A white handkerchief folded neatly beside it. And on the chair's arm, her wedding veil. Moth-eaten. Ash-stained. Dried by time. And beneath it, a note. In handwriting Elias knew better than his own. I'm sorry I couldn't be brave enough to stay. But I couldn't be brave enough to watch you die. You were going to bury yourself in that mine, Elias. And I loved you too much to let that happen. Lillian, his knees gave out. He sank to the floor. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just reached out. Touched the veil. And felt her. Not as a memory. Not as a ghost. But as a woman who had loved him more than survival. More than safety. More than gold. The door creaked again. The bartender stood in the threshold, holding a lantern. He didn't take her, the man said quietly. He saved her. Elias didn't look up. Then why is she gone? The bartender stepped inside. Set the lantern down. She came here 2 nights after he rode out with you chasing him. Walked right in. Asked for a room. Said she had something to return. He paused. She left this. He pointed to the veil. And the bread. Said you'd know what it meant. Elias picked up a piece. Broke it. Smelled it. Lavender. Salt. Love. He ate it. Slowly. Tears fell into the crumbs. And for the first time since the desert took her. He didn't feel alone. Outside, the wind rose again. Carrying the faint echo of a song. The same one she used to hum. The church bell above town hadn't rung since 1872. But that night, for the first time in over 20 years, it tolled. Once. Soft. Like a whisper. Like a goodbye. Or maybe, like a hello. The sheriff didn't resist. He just sat. In the same room where Elias had found the veil and the bread. Same rocking chair. Same cold air. Same silence that pressed against the walls like a living thing. Elias walked in with his rifle slung over his shoulder. No gun drawn. No rage on his face. Just exhaustion, deep as a grave, old as the earth. The sheriff looked up. His eyes were hollow. Not from guilt. From grief. He was thinner now. Hair streaked gray. Hands trembling, not from age, but from something heavier. I knew you'd come, he said. Elias didn't answer. He set his pack down on the floor. Unlaced it slowly. Pulled out the gold. Bars. Nuggets. Dust. All of it. He spilled it across the wooden table between them. It caught the firelight and glittered like cursed stars. "Take it," Elias said. The sheriff didn't move. "I don't want your money. I'm not giving it to you." Silence. "Then, I'm burying it." The sheriff blinked. "You're what?" "I'm burying it," Elias repeated. "Where she's buried." The sheriff leaned back. Stared at the ceiling. "She never told me her name," he whispered. "Not until the end." Elias finally lifted his eyes. "Her name was Lillian." The sheriff closed his eyes. "I know." A pause. "Then, she gave me this." The sheriff reached into his coat pocket. Pulled out a small tin locket. Worn smooth by time. Dented from being held too tight. He opened it. Inside, a charcoal sketch. Of Elias. Smiling. Standing beside a wagon. With Lillian beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Her hair blown by wind. Her eyes full of light. The sheriff's voice cracked. She said, "If I ever met you, give it to you. Tell him I loved him enough to let him live." Elias didn't reach for it. Just stared. At the drawing. At the woman who'd chosen life over love. And the man who'd kept her memory like a prayer. "I thought she hated me," Elias said. "No," the sheriff replied. "She hated the dust. The hunger. The way you looked at that gold like it could bring her back." Elias swallowed. "She didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left," the sheriff said softly, "because she loved you too much to watch you turn into a ghost." Elias picked up one of the gold bars. Heavy. Cold. He held it in his palm. Then he dropped it onto the table. Clang. "It's not worth it," he said. "What's not?" "This." He gestured to the pile. "This weight. This curse. It doesn't fill a house. Doesn't warm a bed. Doesn't bring back the smell of lavender soap on skin." He stood. Walked to the door. Turned. Looked at the sheriff. "You kept her bread. You talked to her. You cried when no one was looking." The sheriff nodded. "Wasn't sure if I was crazy, or if she was still there." Elias stepped closer. Reached into his own coat. Pulled out the glove. Held it out. "Here." The sheriff stared. Then slowly, like he was afraid the world might shatter, he took it. Fingers brushed. For the first time since the desert took her. They both wept. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Like rain on dry soil. When the tears stopped, Elias turned to leave. But the sheriff called out. "Why didn't you kill me?" Elias paused. Didn't look back. "Because killing you wouldn't bring her back." He opened the door. Wind rushed in. Carrying the scent of lavender. And something else. Hope. Or maybe just the memory of it. He walked out into the night. Left the gold. Left the locket. Left the glove. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. Just, tired. And strangely, peacefully, alive. The next morning, the townsfolk found the sheriff sitting in the rocking chair. Still. Eyes closed. Hands folded. On his chest, the locket. Beside him, the loaf of bread. Half eaten. Still warm. No note. No wound. No struggle. Just peace. And the faintest trace of lavender on his shirt. They buried him under the cottonwood tree. No headstone. Just a simple cross made of driftwood. And a single sprig of lavender tied to its base. Some say if you stand there at dusk, you can hear two voices. One low. One soft. Talking. Like they've been waiting. For a very long time. He built the cabin where the land bent toward the west, where the sun set slow and red, like a dying ember. No name on the door. No sign. Just a wooden bench beside the porch, worn smooth by years of sitting. He didn't need visitors. Didn't want them. The world had taken enough from him, he wasn't about to give it more. Every winter solstice, without fail, he baked bread. Same recipe. Flour. Water. Salt. A pinch of lavender, gathered from the wild bushes that grew along the creek, the same kind she'd carried in her pocket. He mixed it by hand. Kneaded it until his arms ached. Let it rise under a cloth while the fire crackled low. And when it was done, he never ate it. He set it on the windowsill. Facing east. Always east. Where the desert began. Where she'd last stood. The first year, he wept as he placed the loaf down. The second year, he whispered her name. The third year, he sang the song she used to hum. By the fifth, he didn't speak at all. Just sat. Watched the light change. Waited. Some said he was mad. Others said he was holy. A few travelers who passed through swore they saw her, just beyond the fence line, just before dusk. A woman in a faded dress, veil fluttering like wings, smiling as she took a bite of the bread. Then she'd vanish into the wind. One man, old and half-blind, came back 3 winters running. "I don't know if you're crazy," he told Elias one night, sipping weak tea by the fire, "but I swear, that bread doesn't go stale." Elias didn't answer. But he smiled. Just once. That night, the wind blew harder than usual. Coyotes howled in the hills. And the cabin's window, cracked and patched with tar, fogged over. Not from cold. From breath. Elias woke at dawn. The bread was gone. Only crumbs remained. And on the sill, a single sprig of lavender. Fresh. Still dewy. As if picked that morning. He reached out. Touched it. And for the first time since the day she left, he felt her. Not in memory. Not in grief. But right there. Beside him. Warm. Real. He walked outside. Stood barefoot in the frost. Looked east. And whispered, "I'm still here." The wind answered. Not in words. In scent. Lavender. Salt. Love. He returned inside. Sat at the table. Pulled out a scrap of parchment. Wrote the recipe again. New ink. Old hands. Bread needs patience, Elias. Like love. Like waiting. He folded it. Tucked it beneath the flour sack. Then he lit the fire. Prepared the dough. For tomorrow. For next year. For every winter solstice until his bones turn to dust. They say if you pass his cabin after sundown, you'll hear singing. Soft. Familiar. A woman's voice. And sometimes, if you're quiet enough, you'll see 2 shadows. One tall. One slight. Standing side by side. At the window. Eating bread. Never hungry. Never alone. The gold. Buried deep beneath the cottonwood tree. No marker. No stone. Just a patch of wild lavender that blooms every spring. Even in snow. Even in silence. Even when no one remembers their names. But the wind does. And the earth. And the bread. Always the bread. They say the desert swallows everything. But not love. Not when it's baked into bread. Not when it's whispered into wind. Not when it's held in a glove, and given back, with grace.